This is a continuation video on the 77 El Camino that we're reconfiguring. Been a while since I've added anything to that, as we're waiting on the motor. And so it's 77 El Camino, real low mile cars, just perfectly mint, fully loaded every option, with a 354 barrel, which is, a good engine, but we're going to put a big block in it. And so the idea was to originally put a 454 in it and just kind of keep it all like a stock looking 454 motor. Then it went to, well, let's put a 502 in it and make it look like a big block car with a 502 in it. 77 is the last big year for the El Camino. And, no big block was offered in that year. In fact, the last big block year was 74. So anyway, so let's get us a GM performance motor. Well, during COVID and everything, they stopped building the 502 motors. And this is the 502 Deluxe engine here, which is the 508 horsepower, they claim, motor with the aluminum heads, roller camshafts, a Generation 6 block. So it's a Generation 6 Mark 6 big block with aluminum heads and roller camshaft, and all of the good additions that they did over the years. So the Generation 6 block actually has the fuel pump provision, as the Generation 5 didn't. Generation 6 had a lot of updates, which this is considered the best big block you can get, the Generation 6. And this is the 502 Deluxe, which is the most expensive motor they had in this cubic inch size. And I think, this was bought by a shop here in Dallas, from Summit Racing some years ago. It was put into a Chevy pickup truck and not driven much, and then one reason or another they decided to pull it out. Nothing wrong with the motor. We did all the compression checks, so I ended up buying it from the shop because I can't get a new one. So we paid quite a bit of money for a used 502 motor, and it's got all the truck accessory brackets on it, which are pointless to us because they can't go on an El Camino. It sits too high. So that's the ZZ502 motor that is going to go into the El Camino. And basically, I think what we're going to do at this point is get all the correct brackets set up for it. We'll put the aluminum water pump on it. This is the truck. I think is if I remember right, that's a reverse running water pump or something. No, it's not, but it's a different water pump. They get the long and the short, and this is a different one. We're going to put a long aluminum one on it. And they get the proper, the Chevelle brackets, which are the same thing as the El Camino, and put all that back together. Anyway, we got the carburetor for it, which is the one that came with the motor, 870 CFM carburetor. So we spent most of yesterday, I didn't do a video of it, spinning it over before we bought the motor, and checking each cylinder's compression, and everything came up like it looked to be correct. So all good there. It's got a flex plate on it, which is what's going to go on that car anyway. It's automatic, and you have to watch that these Generation 6 motors actually have a balance on them here. You can't use a Generation 4 motor flex plate on it, or your motor will be out of balance. So you have to have that, which that came with the package of the motor when it was bought. So and this is the correct casting for what would be a ZZ502 motor there. It's a 191-65956, which I think they had some different castings for earlier 502. So this is, as far as I know, it's the last one that was built, at least the last production run of these, which is the Generation 6 ZZ502 Deluxe motor, which they sold these also, with just the long block and heads. This is, I've got the intake, which I think these are an Edelbrock intake that have been rebranded. And I believe the heads are also Edelbrock heads that have been rebranded too with the Chevy. And the good thing about these heads are they are 110, I believe 110cc chambers. So they run this motor up to, almost 10 to 1. It's 9.8 or something like that in that range, which is a good compression. Can still run pump gas, and it's got decent power. And these are oval port heads, which are nice, because if you run a square port head and then you're talking a Zinger big block, And if you're a big RPM guy, square port's the way to go. But on the streets, square port probably kill you, as it's a dog down low. That's a fact. So these motors here have just a whole bunch of torque all the way up from, basically off idle up to in the 5,800 RPM range, which these motors run 6,000 RPMs if you want them to. And I've seen some of these straight out of the box dynoed, flywheel horsepower we're talking here. They'll get up in the low fives, like 540 horsepower out of these things, even though they're rated at 508 or something like that. They'll get it, because the way they rated this thing was just at 5,500 RPMs, but they'll rev past that. So not necessarily a good thing, but it's got more power than they claim, basically. And so there's a lot of good things. But one of the weak points of this motor, which there's not a lot of weak points of this motor, if you pop the valve covers off, GM did not use any roller rockers on this thing. So it has this stamped seal. They're adjustable, unlike some of the press-in stud motors. These are all screw-in studs with adjustable rockers, but they're just the stamped steel. And the reason they didn't do it is because you couldn't fit them under the valve covers. You'd have to either, use elevated valve covers. In a lot of the assemblies of these engines or applications of these engines, you have brackets that can cover this area, and so it wouldn't work. So I think they just kept that off of there for that reason. And, roller rockers are great. We may end up putting some on this, depending on what configuration we go with on valve covers. We're talking about making it look just like it's a stock big block, but it may keep the same look. It's still up in the air. But that's just probably the weakest point of a ZZ502, and it was done just for practicality for different uses. So that's one of the best, highest horsepower over-the-counter performance engines ever done right there. And I think, if you can find one right now, I was quoted, there's one up in, this is done in February of 2023, and right now that I could only find one of these in stock anywhere in the United States. And you call Scoggins, Dickey, or any of the main places, they're on back order. They don't know when they're going to be produced. And the one that I was quoted was shipped to me almost $15,000. So no, we're going to hold off on that. And fortunately, this opportunity came up for this one that's claimed to have just a few thousand miles on it, and it seems to be at all that when we went through it all. So it'll make a great motor in the El Camino. And one of the stupid things that GM did, because everyone's going to buy this 502 for their pickup truck, right? They put the oil pan, which is a 6-quart oil pan, on that thing. That's the way the Deluxe motor came, and that will not work in Chevelle, El Camino, any kind of GMA body car. So you have to change the oil pan on it, and they actually give you a part number to change that oil pan to a little bit smaller one that works in the A body. But guess what? Just like the motor, they don't have those either. So there's a Moroso and I think a Milliton cross reference. We'll have to research a little bit more onto that. So that oil pan cannot be used in this application, nor can any of the front drive accessories. And I'm hoping the clutch can on the fan, because that's a good big one, and we can use that. That'll be great. And I don't even know the diameter of the fan's the same for the big block fan shroud for the El Camino Chevelle, or not yet, or not. And so we can probably use that too, but we'll find out. But other than the long block intake and intake, there's probably nothing else can be used on this thing other than the motor itself. So that's an update, and I'll walk back and remind everyone what the car is. If you watch my videos and you're wondering, well, why don't these things get updated? Well, it's because we're doing 4 different projects at one time. Like this one here is the Corvette, if you follow that, supercharged Corvette with a ZZ3 motor and big port intake. And there's a lot of people waiting to see this car come around, which is the Eldorado, which is going to get the 403 in it. And right at this minute, we've done nothing to the car because we're getting all the parts together, utilizing the entire 79 Tornado front setup for the Oldsmobile setup for the engine. So we're not going to tear this car apart until everything is ready to go, because this is just too damn nice a car to just sit around not running. So it's running just like it's stock still, but so the El Camino's back here. It became the car cover storage for now, but it's perfect shape. And this is just a absolutely fanatically beautiful car. And I don't know, I've shown a lot of pictures of this thing, but if this is not the best original El Camino of this era in the world, there's nothing is. I mean, the car's literally brand new. And to make it even better, it's a beautiful color and white interior. And to make it even better, it has every option you can get on the high-end package with all the gauges, the power windows. It's even got a 6-way power seat. It's got a CB in it. It's everything. So it's a neat car, and it's just been babied and kept all of its life perfect. And so it's going to take a guy like me to take a perfectly good car with a perfectly good running motor in it, and the best motor you can get in 77 is a 354 barrel. And I'm going to rip it out and put that 502 in here. But when it's done, it's going to be really nice. Not a race car, not a street race. It's just going to be a nice car. So that's what we're doing.